The Titans have their home opener this weekend, taking on the New York Jets, a battle of 0-1 teams. We're going to preview this game, matchups to watch. We got a great guest coming on to help us talk on the Jets side of things. This is the Music City Audible. Let's get to it. Oh, welcome everyone to another episode of the Music City Audible podcast presented by Broadway Sports Media in partnership with 440 Sports. I'm Justin Graver. With me, as always, Justin Melo and Justin. Today, we are flushing last week. We're on to the New York Jets. Titans-Jets previews, what we got on tap. How is it going?
Doing well. Really excited for the guest we've got coming on later. Probably the best one we've ever had, right? And I got to say, it's funny. I'm going to give you credit. What would you say? I've booked 99.9% of the guests, probably higher than 99.9, right? If it was actual math. And yet you pulled out probably the best one we've ever had. So tip of the cap to you, sir.
Yes, thank you. We got Dan Hanzus, host of Heed the Call, coming on later after we talk Titans a little bit. So if you're a Heed the Call listener or a former ATN fan or whatever, and you tune in this podcast just to hear Dan talk with me and with Melo here, maybe hold out a little bit. Give us the benefit of the doubt here for the first 10, 15 minutes as we talk Titans, and then Dan will come on. And if you don't want to do that, then there are time code markers in the description. You can skip to Dan. All right, Justin, let's talk about this from the Titans angle first and foremost. And we all watch Monday Night Football with the Jets taking on the 49ers, so we have a lot of more insight on the Jets, I think, than a typical opponent because they played in prime time. But when you talk about the Titans here, and you talk about bouncing back, which is what the whole team needs to do this weekend, the number one player that needs to bounce back, no surprise here, is Will Levis, who Brian Callahan talked about this in his post-day Monday presser, which obviously we taped our recap pod right after the game ended, so we didn't even get a chance to listen to his press conference on Sunday, let alone the Monday morning press conference. But he kind of, I don't want to say he threw Will Levis under the bus because he didn't put blame on him that wasn't unnecessary, which is how I sort of view the phrase throwing under the bus. But he did put some blame on him and even talked about how he was surprised at kind of how poorly Will Levis played, and particularly that he said they had a conversation at the end of the third quarter before the first interception that Levis threw, just saying, look, the Bears offense is not doing anything. We don't need to do anything crazy on our side with the ball right now. We just need to keep possession, run some clock, and we're going to win this game. So protect the ball, chief amongst everything. And Levis goes out beginning of the fourth quarter and throws the pick six right after that conversation. So a lot of red flags, I would say, from Levis in this performance that make me wonder if he can bounce back. But that is the story, I think, of the Titans this week is, can he bounce back?
Well, it's funny. I thought the press conference on Monday, look, we've talked all summer, preseason training camp, yada, yada, how honest of an evaluator Brian Callahan is and how honest he is with the media.
Yeah.
At the same time, he's nicer than Mike Vrabel, right? I think the media likes him way more than they liked Vrabel because he's better to the media than Vrabel was. Call it what it is, right? He's giving you the injury updates right away. He's not bullshitting. There's no coach speak. He's just telling you exactly what's on his mind.
Right.
But he is a very nice guy, right? I think there's a balance there. That's kind of what took me aback a little about the Levis comments. I'm glad he made it because it's who he is. He's honest. So if he played poorly, he got up there and he honestly told you that he played poorly. I think that comment, the conversation about, let's just protect the ball, it makes that interception so much worse, right? To know that should have been in Levis's mind. It was drilled into it right before the drive, and that's what he went out there and did. And there were other things Callahan said, right? He talked about taking hits.
Yeah.
He said, I think at one point he said, I don't really know what to do anymore. We're just going to keep hammering it home until it sticks, because it was obviously something he said a lot throughout the preseason when he took that boneheaded tackle, and I think it was the second preseason game into the end zone or whatever it was. And yet he went out there on Sunday and took a lot of boneheaded hits from the Bears as well. So said, keep hammering it home. The one positive there was he actually said it was the same thing with Joe Burrow when he was a young quarterback. We kind of kept saying it until he took to it. So I guess that he's got some hope there that, he'll eventually respond to that. But it was certainly an honest evaluation from Brian Callahan, and he sounded very disappointed with the play of his quarterback. At another point, he said, we don't know, and this is very true, don't know how much progress you've made, how much coaching you've taken to until you actually go out there and play. And he didn't flat out say it, but the answer to that question is not a lot, right? Or none whatsoever. And that's why he said it. So it was a very honest, brutal evaluation from Coach Callahan, but in my opinion, a necessary one.
Another thing he said was if we'd just punted on every first down in the second half, we probably would have won this game, which is an indictment on the offense for sure. But he then finished that statement by saying, because of how well our defense was playing, which that part of the quote was chopped off when it got blasted all over social media for the sake of Brian Callahan throws his offense under the bus. No, he was complimenting the defense, but he was also kind of throwing the offense. I mean, the offense wasn't playing well.
I almost wonder if the defense comment was a little add-on to like, oh shit, what did I just say? Let me, you know what I mean? Let me backpedal a little here because it was like I said, brutally honest but necessary.
So if we're looking at a Will Levis bounce back, are there any signs we can cling to that give us hope that he actually can bounce back? I think the number one thing is he took all the blame for this loss in his own press conference, and as he should have, as the leader of the team, whether it's his fault or not, he's probably almost got to get up there and do that. And like we always talk about when a quarterback goes up, like to use a college football reference, for example, Shedeur Sanders, quarterback of Colorado, Deion Sanders' son, if you're not a college football fan, goes up there after their loss to Nebraska on Saturday and starts blaming his offensive line and blaming receivers for making, quote, rookie mistakes. And like, that's not what you ever want to see from your quarterback. So nice to see Will Levis get up there and take the blame, but he sort of has to do that anyway. So I don't want to give him too much credit, and the fact that he's such a competitive guy that he wants to succeed. And obviously all these guys want to succeed. So that's also sort of just a fluff statement that means nothing, but it does give me a little bit of hope that he's going to go study this tape hard, be really hard on himself. He's talked about how he's always been harder on himself than even his coaches have been, and that he needs to give himself more grace. But for this performance, I think he should be very hard on himself. And just the fact that also Brian Callahan, another thing he said in his press conference was the number one issue to me in this game with Will Levis was how he dealt with pressure. And the Titans were blitzed on a lot of dropbacks, and I think he was pressured over 45% or around 45% of his dropbacks in this game, which was a high number. Bears sending so many blitzes in the second half because they realized that Will Levis wasn't dealing with pressure well. But Callahan said that he wasn't drifting like this in the pocket throughout training camp, that he didn't see that at all. And we didn't really see it in the preseason either. Not that he ever dealt with any pressure in the preseason, but that pocket management, the awareness and the maneuvering in the pocket is like one of the most crucial skills a quarterback can have to succeed at a high level. Like if you're reliant on having a great offensive line in front of you, maybe that can get you to a high seed in the playoffs. But once you make the playoffs, like you never win a Super Bowl with a quarterback who can't navigate pressure at a high level unless you have an all-time great defense or something like that. So that is the most concerning thing. But the fact that Callahan said it wasn't an issue throughout training camp does give me a little bit of hope that this was just like, it's week one, you're on the road, it's a loud environment, things are spiraling out of control as the lead is evaporating with a blocked punt touchdown and the strip sack that gives them a field goal, and now it's a closer game, and then the pick six obviously happened because he drifted into pressure a little bit. But all that said, if he can clean up that one area against the Jets defense that we're going to talk about in a little bit with Dan, did not do a good job of getting pressure against the 49ers and Brock Purdy, maybe if he can just be a little more aware in the pocket and take better care of the football, that he can have that bounce back game. But I'm in believe it till I will believe it when I see it mode.
Well, a couple things. Number one, that trait, as you said, it's so important. And it's my biggest, the pocket presence, being able to navigate pressure. Let me just clarify. But it's so important. And to me, in truth, it's my biggest long-term concern with him right now. I'm not convinced it's something that he'll figure out or that he can figure out. And if he doesn't, it will be his undoing, right? So I think that's the biggest concern for me. It's funny you say this. I just wrote an article. I mean, it's published by the time you listen to this. Go check it out. Very timely on Titansized. I've got the official numbers of how he performed under pressure on Sunday. And I compare, by the way, I think it was 47.5% of his dropbacks. He was pressured, second most of any starting quarterback in the league, according to Next Gen Stats. And that some of that goes on the O-line too. Yep. That number can't be that high. It's far too high. Very similar to what it was last year. It can't be that high. But back to him, I've got the official numbers from Pro Football Focus's charting. I wrote it out in the article, and I compared it to what it was last year for him. And you start to see a concerning trend emerge, I think. So go read that article on Titan Size right now. I don't think you'll regret it because it's some good stuff I put in there research-wise about how he's performed under pressure. And I compared it to another young quarterback by the way, as to how that one's performed under pressure. So
Interesting.
I've got some concerns there, no doubt about it. If you want to be optimistic, I'll say, look, no one's angrier at that Will Levis performance than Will Levis, right? He knows he cost his team the game. We've talked a lot about him being sort of this psycho competitor. He's going to be fired up for this one. They're at home. It's their home opener. Remember last year when they had that, I don't remember who they played already, but was it the New Orleans, was it the Saints? It was such a snooze fest of a week 1 loss. I didn't have high hopes. They came back the week after and they beat the Los Angeles Chargers, what we thought was going to be a good Los Angeles Chargers team at home in the home opener. You're looking for that kind of response. That was a fired up crowd. That was a fired up team. You want the same from Will Levis. No one's more anxious to play on Sunday than he is. He can't wait for it to get here. He wants to put that in his rearview mirror. I'm not saying he will. I don't love this matchup, but a little bit of leeway here to give a guy that I would say is a psycho competitor, to give him a chance to bounce back, because no one wants it more than him.
Yeah, I agree. And the last thing I'll say on this, we're recording this before the injury report comes out later today on Wednesday. I wouldn't be shocked to see Levis show up there with like a limited participant with some sort of back issue or something, because he was getting that heat pack during the game. He took that huge shot. So that's just something to monitor. Let's talk about the defense really quick. We're going to do our I'll Drink to That segment, sponsored by Sinkers Beverages. A reminder to anyone listening to this on audio, we appreciate you. But if you're watching on YouTube, please remember to subscribe to the channel, give this video a thumbs up, like, and turn on channel alerts so you get a notification every time we drop a new video. And leave a comment below. What are you looking forward to seeing in this hopefully bounce back performance for the Titans? All right, let's talk Titans defense here really quick about against this Jets offense that struggled a bit on Monday night. But I do think context is important here, because really they didn't get a lot of opportunities. The Jets defense kept the Jets defense could not get off the field against the 49ers offense, and didn't give Rodgers and his team very many chances to attack on that side of the ball. They went 3 and out on their first 2 drives, I believe the Jets did, and then they really put a long, nice drive together after that. And it felt a little bit like we're shaking off the rust here. This Jets team is a lot of veterans, a lot of guys who didn't play in the preseason. So this was sort of like their get ready for the season game in week 1. And they needed their defense to give them more chances to find their footing, and they just didn't have that. So I am curious to see how this Titans defense plays against a Jets offense that struggled in limited chances. Aaron Rodgers did play very well. Breece Hall's a talented running back. He fumbled early. That's what it was. It wasn't 2-3 and outs. It was a Breece Hall fumble on the second drive that is very uncharacteristic for him. Only the second lost fumble of his career. So things that you can't rely on if you're the Titans defense, going up against a much more formidable quarterback than what they saw in Caleb Williams. I'm curious to see if this Titans defense is for real. If they have another performance like last week, we can say with confidence they are for real. Or was this like a week 1 up against a rookie quarterback in his first NFL start against a team with a new offensive coordinator that has little continuity on the offensive side of the ball with a lot of new pieces? Was that why the defense was successful? Or was it because they're just a good defense and they're going to be successful against most opponents this year? That's what I'm most interested to see in this game.
Well, I'm glad you brought it up. By the way, I got the numbers. Jets only had the ball for 21 minutes in that Monday Night Football game against 49ers had almost 39 minutes.
And how many of those minutes was Tyrod Taylor the quarterback? Like 3 or 4 of them?
I mean, the last 2 or 3 probably. But still, 21 minutes possession, you're not going to win many football games. I think some of that, probably more credit to the Jets defense not getting off the field, but some of that blame has to go to the Jets offense, I think, for not doing a better job sustaining drives, especially some of those early ones. Like you said, you have a fumble, a 3 and out, not the way you want to start. I will say, I mean, I'm no body language expert. I didn't feel a lot of concern on the Jets sideline. Like I didn't feel that they were in panic mode. Yeah. I watched Aaron Rodgers' post-game presser. I didn't think he was in panic mode. So I think there's a quiet confidence to them coming into this game against Tennessee. I'm glad you brought up the defense, but I'm also glad you didn't take my point away. What I'm most fascinated about going into this matchup is Denard Wilson's approach. You are a first-year defensive coordinator going against a 19-year pro quarterback, however long Aaron Rodgers has been in the league. You couldn't draw up a more different matchup between a rookie quarterback in week 1 making his first career start and Aaron Rodgers in week 2.
The oldest player in the National Football League this season.
The oldest player in the National Football League this season. What I'm most fascinated about, we know what this Denard Wilson defense wants to be, right? Pressure packages, exotic blitzes, send the house, get the quarterback off his timing. That's going to work against a guy like Caleb Williams, who's never seen the game at the NFL speed level before, right? Doesn't work against Aaron Rodgers. Okay, you're talking about one of the best quarterbacks of all time against the blitz. All time. Very curious to see how that alters Denard Wilson's approach. An inexperienced DC, but he's not stupid. He's smart enough to know that doesn't work against Aaron Rodgers. I think you just got to play good old-fashioned defense. I think there are no bells and whistles that work against Aaron Rodgers. Okay, I think it's rushing 4, sometimes rushing 3.
Yep.
I'd argue, and dropping 7 and 8. Just cover. You've got to cover and hope those 3 or 4 can get home in a respectable amount of time. If you're only rushing 3 or 4, it might not be super quick, although I do think the Jets O-line, I think it's a little bit better than the Bears. It's better than it was last year. I don't think it's an elite unit. You've got a quarterback, an aging one, obviously, that's not as quick. I mean, he's never quick, but he's even slower than he used to be. Maybe the pocket movement's not as good as it used to be since the Achilles injury. I think you got to get home in a respectable amount of time with 3 or 4. You got to drop 7 or 8. You got to cover well. Will Denard Wilson be willing to abandon what we think is his patented blitz approach and just say, hey, he's going to kill us if we blitz him? We just got to play good old-fashioned defense.
I hope they do take that approach because I do think that's the way to beat Aaron Rodgers. I'm worried that Denard Wilson is going to be very blitz-happy and the Titans might pay for it, and we'll see if they adjust, if they do come out that way. I'm very excited to see how T'Vondre Sweat and Jeffrey Simmons do in their second game together. They were dominant against the Bears. Can they keep that up against the Jets' interior offensive line that added pieces this offseason to sort of try to upgrade? And Jeffrey Simmons tweeted about T'Vondre Sweat that we haven't even seen his best play yet, so maybe there's another level he can unlock. I mean, I assume so. He's only played 1 game, but it was a great game. He's one of the highest graded Titans defenders according to PFF. So definitely looking forward to that. Justin, let's hit our segment. I'll drink to that. Sponsored by Sinkers Beverages in East Nashville. Here's something I'm drinking to. And we're going to talk about this with Dan in a second. The Titans running attack against this Jets defense. The Jets interior of their defense, most of the damage that Jordan Mason did on Monday Night Football against this Jets defense was up the middle, between the tackles. It wasn't on the edges. It wasn't where Hassan Reddick would have made a difference, who's not even, a run-stuffing guy to begin with. But I think the Titans running up the middle behind Lloyd Cushenberry and Peter Skoronski and Dylan Radins should be back. We got an update on him. It's just a rib bruise, so he should be back this weekend. Running up the middle behind that offensive line and then mixing in the off-tackle runs with J.C. Latham, moving bodies, and NPF getting out in space. I will drink to what I hoped will be a very productive rushing attack against the Jets based on what we saw on Monday night.
Yeah, I think, as we said, they allowed 180 rush yards in this game. The Jets did. They could not stop a nosebleed. They were bad against the run last year. Brian Callahan talked about wanting to lean on Tajay Spears more in this game or get him more opportunities. It was not a 50-50 timeshare between Pollard and Spears. So that's what I'm heading into this game watching. Number one, I think Tony Pollard is the key to this game. Titans need to run the ball well. He looked good and explosive against the Bears. Again, we saw a really porous Jets run D on Monday. You want to take some pressure off your young quarterback that's looking to bounce back against a tough D. This is not an ideal bounce back matchup for Will Levis on paper based on how good that Jets secondary is. Not an ideal matchup. You got to ride Tony Pollard, ride the run game, get Tajay Spears more involved, maybe more of a timeshare, really lean on what you think is a two-headed monster in your backfield. So that's what I'm drinking to. A strong run game, Tony Pollard continuing what he did in week 1, but also a lot more Tajay Spears because I think that's a focal point of Callahan's game plan going into this one.
I'll drink to that. Brought to you by Sinkers Beverages, the premier wine, spirits, and beer store in East Nashville, serving the community since 1985. Their knowledgeable staff is proud to help you with large parties, themed events, or finding something unique for a special occasion. From birthday parties to milestone celebrations to everyday moments, Sinkers can help with the right drink for every occasion. And if you head to sinkersbeverages.com or check the link in this podcast description, you can join the In Crowd. In Crowd members get access to allocated wines and spirits, exclusive events, early access to barrel releases, and more. Plus, Sinkers Beverages is on Uber Eats, so check them out there if you need booze delivered to your front door. All right, Justin, let's get to Dan Hanzus now, our guest, and then we will wrap this show up with our predictions. All right, let's now welcome in our guest for this episode, the legendary Dan Hanzus. Justin, we've hooked a lot of big fish on this show, to pat ourselves on the back a little bit, but I think this might be the biggest one we've ever reeled in. Dan, thanks for joining us. How's it going?
Now that we fulfilled the contractual obligation of you saying legendary in the setup, I will continue and speak. So yes, this is awesome to be here. I love the switch of the roles here with Justin as the host and me trying to get a word in, and then the fact that there are two Justins at the same time. I wish there were two spinning Titans helmets at the same time. That's something maybe to work on. Anyway, happy to be here, and big game coming up for both our teams on Sunday.
Yeah, both teams looking to avoid that dreaded 0-2 start. The historical chances of making the playoffs after starting 0-2 are obviously not good. A lot of that because bad teams are generally the ones that start 0-2 versus playoff teams starting 0-2. But yeah, a lot on the line here, especially for a team like the Jets, who came into the season with huge expectations and then disappointing first showing on Monday night against the Niners. Titans, maybe different expectations nationally, but I think the fan base certainly had high hopes. So let's dive in here, Dan. Aaron Rodgers back on the field for the Jets, finally completes a game with New York. You love to see that, even if they didn't get the win. Stats were not very gaudy. 13 of 21 passing, 167 yards and a touchdown, plus that interception on the deflected ball. How do you think he looked, and what is your outlook for Rodgers right now after watching him on Monday night?
I was really happy. That might be the only thing that I took out of the game that was a positive, that Rodgers played 4 quarters, or most of 4 quarters, until they pulled him out in garbage time, which was the right move. I thought we didn't really see him move too much out of the pocket, but I think that's going to be what it is now. It's not going to be the old Aaron Rodgers of his Packers heyday. But as long as he could show elusiveness and escaping the rush, and he wasn't kind of snowed under by the San Francisco pass rush. So came out well. You put a lot of hopes as a Jets fan on the third drive of the game, where he just showed complete command at the line of scrimmage in a hostile environment and marched the Jets down the field, obviously against a very good San Francisco team. And you saw on the second touchdown pass he threw to Allen Lazard, or I guess it was the first touchdown pass he threw to Allen Lazard. The first drive ended with the Breece Hall touchdown. He did the patented, drawing the team off sides and then making the most of the free play. And it's like, as a Jets fan who's been, watching just horrific quarterback play for, it feels like, 40 years, but especially in the last decade, it was like, okay, that guy's still here. And now it is the defense that we got to get fixed, which is the frustrating part, because under Saleh, it's been the defense that's been good to great, and then the offense that's been a mess. And then this season starts and it flips, which is very Jets and on brand in a lot of ways.
Yeah, we will talk about the defense in a sec. I have one more question about the offense before we get there. And on the Rodgers thing, it's interesting. PFF gave Rodgers an 86.2 grade, which was the 5th highest among all quarterbacks for the week, which you wouldn't guess that looking at his stats. 167 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, but he really was in control of the game. And I think those suppressed stats are more about just the opportunities the Jets didn't have on offense because of their defense. But on the offensive side of the ball, Garrett Wilson came out in this game, started off really hot. That the first drive that the Jets really got momentum going, it was basically all Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall. But then he got a lot quieter after that. Titans defense looked really, really good against the Bears, but I think a lot of that was matchup based. Caleb Williams in his first NFL start. The Jets have a lot of weapons just like the Bears do, but the quarterback position makes such a huge difference. I am looking forward to seeing if the Titans match up L'Jarius Sneed on Garrett Wilson and see if they can use his physicality to sort of take away some of that playmaking ability. But in your opinion, what do you think really happened to Garrett Wilson after that first quarter? And how do you think the Jets receivers match up with the Titans secondary?
Yeah, I think Garrett Wilson was targeted a bunch early on in the game. And then when they lost control because the defense could not get off the field, I believe they gave up 8 straight scoring drives from the first quarter to the fourth. It just kind of messed so much with the rhythm and the cadence of the game that, yeah, they had a little bit of a miscommunication later in the game on a 4th down that salted the game away. But that wasn't a great pass by Rodgers. There was an interception when Garrett Wilson was targeted, but that was good coverage and a deflection for an INT. I think he's going to be fine. That's Sneed versus Wilson's a great matchup. I'll be very interested to see how the rest of the Jets wide receiver group looks, because Allen Lazard, who had a bad drop to start Monday night, but then came on and scored 2 touchdowns, including 1 in garbage time. But I just think that's a sign of things to come, that he is going to be back to kind of what we remembered with the Packers, where he's not an impact star player, but he's going to be a guy for them that Rodgers is going to find, and he's going to, make plays. Mike Williams spent most of week one on the sideline. He got cleared late after, coming back from the ACL surgery after being signed away from the Chargers. I'm really interested to see if he gets his snaps ramped up, because he could be the guy that kind of really stretches the offense and makes life difficult for the Tennessee secondary. So, the wide receiver group, if Lazard kind of levels out to prior places and Williams is healthy and on the field and making plays, can be very good. But right now it is really kind of Garrett Wilson and a lot of question marks.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, Dan. And you kind of alluded to the defense a second ago. And I think the thing that jumped out to me about this game is the 49ers, they rushed for 180 yards despite being without Christian McCaffrey. I mean, we were all kind of taken aback when he was a bit of a surprise scratch there. Well, they didn't miss a beat. They leaned on Jordan Mason, a young guy making his first career start. He goes for 150 yards and a touchdown. He averaged 5.3 yards per carry on 28 attempts. I mean,
Don't remind me, Justin, too.
I mean, that is a workhorse line, right? Like, no hesitation to just hand him the reins to the offense. And he produced. Now, this Jets defense, this was a bottom 10 unit last year. I believe they were 8th worst in the league in rushing yards allowed per contest. Are you concerned that that's maybe something that hasn't been fixed?
I am. How could you not be? Because it wasn't just that the 49ers were winning at the line of scrimmage and thriving with a backup running back. They were dominating. And the Jets, lost some players in the offseason. And then Hassan Reddick was kind of the piece that was supposed to stabilize things. He's not known as a run stuffer. He's a pass rusher. But in general, the Jets lost pieces on that defensive line. And I think as a fan who, I'm not a big Robert Saleh fan. I do like Jeff Ulbrich, their defensive coordinator. I think he's an asset for them. So I gave them a little bit of the benefit of the doubt that they were going to figure things out. But obviously I'm going into week 2 really nervous about it, because I think I watched the Titans-Bears game this morning because I'm a pro and I respect your podcast, and that's how you have to do it. And first of all, I'm kind of horrified by your quarterback, but listen, it's one game, so we're not going to make too much of it. He played very poorly. Tony Pollard, especially in the first 3 quarters, looked great. And I think about, okay, so even though I want to say, and I had some fun, Justin, on our Monday night recap, that this is going to be an easy one for the Jets, it's not going to be, because the Jets didn't show anything on defense so far to make you think anything will be easy. Pollard is a guy that really does showing some signs that he could be a bounce back guy after that down year in Dallas. And playing at home, Tennessee, in front of a crowd that's going to be amped up, coming off a really disappointing loss in a game you let get away. Do I have a fear that Pollard is going to have his way with the Jets D? Yeah, I think that is going to be the key on Sunday. If the Titans can run the ball and put Levis in better situations, the Jets could be in trouble. So that is the key to this game. It will be in the trenches, I think.
And it wasn't just the run defense for the Jets. We can talk a little bit about the pass rush, too. As you mentioned, Dan, they lost a couple guys in the offseason, John Franklin Myers, Quentin Jefferson, a couple others. There was one snap, Graver and I, we noticed someone pointed out on social media, there was one snap where the Jets' personnel on the D-line was Braden McGregor, who's a 7th-round rookie out of Michigan, Jalen Holmes, who I believe is a first-year UDFA, and Michael Clements, a guy that was not effective rushing the passer last year and throughout the early portion of his career. That drive ended up being the big completion to the fullback. That play ended up being the big completion to the fullback. The Jets ended up getting 2 sacks in this game. One of them was unblocked by Michael Clements, and the other was on a safety blitz. Really concerning on the pass rushing front. Comment a little bit on that, and do you think that maybe adds a sense of urgency to get something done with Reddick before Sunday?
Yeah, I still don't think so. I think the Jets are comfortable playing this game of chicken out and believing that San Francisco on the road, Monday Night Football, week 1, with a veteran roster that didn't get many reps. Okay, like, it's disappointing the way that game went, but we have, again, all due respect, but we have Titans, we have Broncos, we have Patriots, I believe, the next 3 weeks. And I would think internally the Jets feel like, man, we can get through this, hopefully at 3-1, but even 2-2, the sky's not falling. And if Hassan Reddick wants to sit out. What's Justin? You helped me in so many ways, including math. What's 800,000 the game check times 4? Like 3.2 million? Am I right? I don't know.
Yep. Yeah.
I mean, let's see how much longer Hassan Reddick plans to hold out. And if he continues to hold out, eventually the contract tolls over and he could really start to talk about you're messing with your career. So I think Reddick is on this team and playing before week 4. I don't know about Sunday, so it's good news for Titans fans. But yes, they certainly could have used him on Monday night. But again, the game was lost not because they couldn't get to Brock Purdy, but they couldn't tackle the backup running back. So that's my biggest concern. And you make a really great point about the Jets' personnel losses and who's there now. Like, these are unproven guys, and until they show that they could play, the Jets' defensive line, which has been a strength under Saleh, it should be scrutinized.
Yeah. Dan, we really appreciate your time. We got one last question here. We wrap up all our preview shows with this question. If you had to predict how this game unfolds, like the game flow, and then maybe a final score prediction, and I will let you know, most of our guests cover other teams, do not predict the Titans to win. So feel free to just let our audience have the bad news if that's how you feel. But how do you see this game unfolding?
I do kind of want to reverse jinx the Titans on a Titans podcast. But yeah, I think and you guys, I'm sure, are doing a lot of Will Levis talk right now, so I won't get there. I won't get bogged down there, but I think the Jets pass rush will do a better job getting home against Levis, who has not shown comfort in the pocket yet. I think there's enough talent on that defense and the coaching. The one thing that Saleh can do is coach defense. I think they're going to be fired up after being kind of humiliated on primetime. If I feel like as a fan, I always want a team coming into my building, especially, an 0-1 situation. It would have been nice if the Jets almost would have won on Monday. But now you get this Jets team that's angry and embarrassed and looking to get on track. I think Rodgers plays very well in this game. I thought he did play very well on Monday. I think the Jets defense plays better. And I think they get right here against your Titans. And I'll say 27-10. Wow. I pick the Jets over the Titans, and it doesn't affect how I feel about Justin or this wonderful show that I'm on. But I do feel like it's a bad setup for Tennessee. But I could, of course, be wrong, and Tony Pollard could run for 197 yards too, because that's what being a Jets fan is all about. So I'll hedge my bet there.
A lot of similarities right now between the Jets fandom and the Titans fandom.
Yes.
Graver, it's pretty funny though. It's funny when Dan was saying, I was thinking to myself last night, I hope the Jets win this game. I really do. I was thinking the same thing. And good news for you, Dan, if the Jets pass rushers don't get home, there's a decent chance Will Levis will just drift right into them anyway. So it might work out okay for you. Dan, thank you so much. Yes. I got to say, I'm shocked you spend as much time as you do with Graver and decided to spend additional time with him by coming on this show.
Trust me, I think about it this summer when we were relaunching our show as Heed the Call. Marc Sessler and I had many conversations about, like, Justin is such a great pro, but as a person, do we want to be that close to him again? And we went, because he's talented, we went with that choice. But we'll see. I mean, day by day.
Just like in the NFL, great talent covers all the personal warts, right?
Right. You're a diva wide receiver, basically, that we just have to manage because you're very productive.
Dan, thanks so much. Everybody out there, check out Heed the Call podcast that I produce, that Dan hosts alongside Marc Sessler, the rebooted version of Around the NFL here. I think better. Can I say better? And back and better than ever.
I think it's better.
So check out Heed the Call. Check out Dan Hanzus.
And in no small part, now that I negged you, Justin, in no small part to your incredible contribution to the show, both as a producer and a man on the mic. So that's why I am obviously thrilled to do this show, because I love you, bud.
Love you too, Dan. Appreciate your time, and we'll talk to you soon, maybe. I don't know.
Peace.
All right. Thanks again to Dan Hanzus for joining us. That was a lot of fun, Justin. Like we said, probably the biggest fish that we have hooked as a podcast here. And so I'm glad we got him on. Let's get to our predictions. And before we give our predictions for this week, we should recap what happened last week. I predicted a Titans victory. I was wrong about that. You predicted a Bears victory. I believe you said 24-20. Which means you got it wrong. I'm sorry, I hate to break it to you, but 24-17 was the score. You did not get that. No, I'm just playing with you. You're up 1-0 on me right now, and I think the way we should do this going forward, Justin, just so there's no confusion, is whoever's closer gets the point for that week. So you were closer by a lot, but like, let's say we both predicted a Titans win. Whoever had the Titans winning by fewer points or scoring fewer, closer to 17 points, like that's how we'll determine this for the rest of the season. So without further ado, who you got? Titans, Jets.
Yeah, I'm going Jets here. I mean, really just you're going to do the same. Don't tell me you're not. So I'm going Jets here. I got to be proven wrong. As much as I want to buy into the bounce back spot, the home opener, I got to see it to believe it. I thought that, look, the Jets looked very beatable in that game. The Titans should feel okay, based on what their film study will tell them. But Aaron Rodgers versus Will Levis, I still think this Jets defense has a couple more threats than the Titans do. I'm going to go Jets 24, Titans 16.
Looks like you didn't just think of that on the spot. You actually put some time and effort into that score prediction, or no?
No, not at all. I came up with that. I thought it was pretty clear that I just came up with it on the spot. But yeah, I've got Jets 24, Titans 16.
All right, I am going to pick a Titans bounce back win. And let me tell you why. I know, I'm a homer, I'm biased. Let me tell you why.
You're 0-2 is what you are.
Week 1 is a fucking liar, dude. Week 1s are liars. And maybe it'll be a liar for the Jets too. And so, like, it's 2 0-1 teams. So somebody wasn't lying because somebody's going to lose this game. I don't expect them to tie. So there is going to be an 0-2 team coming out of this game, most likely. But I think, like the reference you gave with the Saints game last year and the Titans bounce back in week 2, and even if going back further than that, the Cardinals disaster, Titans bounce back in week 2. The Titans haven't won a week 1 game since 2020, which is too long. But you don't have to be good in week 1. It's not how you start. It's how you finish. So week 1, get the jitters out. Brian Callahan, first game ever calling plays that wasn't a preseason game. Denard Wilson, first game ever calling plays that wasn't a preseason game. And Denard Wilson's defense called an excellent game on that side of the ball. Brian Callahan, we didn't ever talk about this, but Brian Callahan play calling in the second half went way away from play action, way away from motions at the snap, especially on pass plays, which are things that like we saw him do a lot in the preseason and that he's talked about wanting to do a lot and that Cincinnati did a lot. And then we didn't see a lot of it in week 1. I think he may have let the game get away from him a little bit. I'm sure he's self-critiquing on that front. I think going away from Pollard in the second half, although it wasn't necessarily they went away from Pollard, 10 carries for 25 yards for the Titans as a team in the second half. The Bears run blitzing out the ass really stopped the run in the second half. But I think Brian Callahan, now that he's had that experience of that game, I think he will call a better second half. And I'm just banking on Will Levis not being a bad quarterback. Like, he doesn't have to be a great quarterback. Just don't be a bad quarterback. Don't be Daniel Jones, Carson Wentz level of careless with the football. And the Titans can win this game if the run game gets going the way I think it can get going, and if the defense can play as well as they did last week. So that's why I'm picking a Titans win, but I do think it's low scoring. Still think the Titans offense is going to struggle to really move the ball and put points up, but I think the Titans defense is going to hold the Jets in check. I'm going 17-16 Titans win on a last second game-winning field goal.
Nick Folk, it better be within 50, right? Within 45
yes.
If they're winning on a last second game-winning field goal. I love your optimism. Maybe I shouldn't have brought up the Chargers thing from last year. I think it gave you the last little surge of confidence you needed to make that pick. God, I hope you're right. 0-2 is a dark place to be. It would be a dark place for this podcast. Guys will y'all will keep tuning in, but it's so much more fun to podcast about this team when they're winning, when they're in contention. 0-2 wouldn't be a good spot. I hope I'm wrong. I hope we go into next week at 1-1. Both the Titans record, your record, and my record, all 1-1. Cheers to that.
Yeah, let's even it all up. Cheers to that. I'll drink to that, Justin. All right, thanks everyone for tuning in. Again, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Give this video a thumbs up, like, and turn on channel alerts to get a notification every time we drop a new video. Drop a comment below. Prediction for this game. Who you got, Titans or Jets? Thanks again to Dan Hanzus for joining us. Thanks again to Sinkers Beverages for sponsoring this episode. We will be back on Sunday right after the game to recap what happens. Hopefully we're recapping a Titans win, but if we're recapping a Titans 0-2, Justin, we will still find something to drink to, and we will have silver linings, which was our debut segment last week.
If we're 0-2, I'm gonna grab an actual drink live on that show. I'm dead serious. I'm gonna grab an actual drink if we're 0-2 while we're doing that live pod.
Product placement, baby. I'm all for it. All right, that'll do it for us. Until then, y'all stay safe out there and tighten up.
a Broadway sports media production.